Hey guys, it's EJ with Blockpad, and today we're going to take a look at what I call duplicate names. So we get this question a lot where someone needs to repeat a calculation and they go to use the same value name again and they get an error. The reason this happens is that Blockpad doesn't work like MathCAD or other math softwares, top to bottom. It works a lot more like a spreadsheet where you can define a value anywhere and reference that value from anywhere. So to illustrate this, I have this simple example where I have A and B defined below the equation that uses them, the C equation. So you get an error if I create another value named A, because now this C equation doesn't know which A to use. And so that's the duplicate names problem. Blockpad basically has three methods that you can use to handle this duplicate names. And the first is the one that I think is the best method, which is wrapping the subcalculations in a section. So to show you that, first I'm going to duplicate this report so I can get a new report to show it to you in. So to wrap this in a section, we're going to highlight a subcalculation, go to Insert, find Section, make it around paragraphs. So essentially what this does is it puts these values inside of a box called Section 1. And so if you are inside Section 1, you can just reference those values like normal. But if you are outside of it, Blockpad will need to see this section 1 dot area. And so because we have that differentiation, we no longer have the duplicate names value problem. So we're going to do the same thing for circle 2, highlight it, get section around paragraphs, and click OK. So now if I have a calculation that uses this diameter, I'll have section 1 dot diameter. And similarly, this will be section 2 dot diameter. Now to make things a little bit clearer, we can also name these sections. So I'm going to click on the label, come to the properties window, and I'll change name to circle 1. Notice that that changes section 1 to circle 1 in the equation as well. And do the same thing, section 2, come to the properties window and name this circle 2. So that is how you would handle duplicate names with sections. And there's a lot of benefits to using this method. So the first is that you end up with these sections that have sort of predefined subcalculations that you can copy and paste. So I'll click this label here, press Control C, and come down to the bottom, press Control V. And I have this new section named Circle 3, and I can change the values as I want to. And I can also reference it in a calculation just like the other ones. So you can do this as many times as you want in the document. You can just keep pasting and you'll get circle 4, circle 5. I'm going to come and change this text so that it matches. And one useful thing you could do actually would be to keep a separate kind of template file of all different sort of subcalculations inside of a section, and then you can paste those into your working files as you need them. Another benefit is that if you use the navigation tree, come to View Navigation Tree, these named sections show up in the navigation tree and you can navigate to them as needed. So if I click on circle 5, notice it brings me down to circle 5. This is really useful, especially if you've got a very large file with a lot of pages. You can hop to any section or subcalculation that you need to. So that's the section method. The next method is a little bit trivial, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, and that's just using underscore to add a subscript. So here I'll say underscore 1, for area, I'll have _1, and I'll add an _1 here as well. And down here, I'll add _2 and an _2. And notice that makes these calculations work. Before we had an error, and now they work. It's a little bit manual and tedious, but for a couple of repeated calculations, this works pretty good. And also, if you highlight Control-C to copy and paste these, Blockpad will automatically increase the number of the subscripts. So this becomes diameter 3, and you can keep pasting it down the way. Now, the third method that you can use is a step-by-step section, which recreates the top to bottom calculation system of other math softwares inside of a section. So if we highlight all of this, come to Insert, make sure it's a step-by-step section around paragraphs. Now inside of this step section, the calculations work top to bottom. So for example, if I try to reference area times 2, I get an error. But if I reference it here, if I say area times 2 here, then I will get this value times 2. And if I try it here, I will get this value times 2. So that can work really well if you really prefer having that overriding system that is in other math softwares. We tend to not really suggest it because it's not as good at handling large amounts of repeated calculations like this first section, but it does work if you prefer it as an option. But just to note though, that if you are outside of the step section and you reference a value, it's going to use the bottommost defined value. So if you're outside of the step section, there's not really going to be a way to reference this 0.785 area. It's always going to use the bottommost. Also, you can be outside of the step section above it, and while you can reference values, it's always going to be the bottommost, like that. So if you really prefer this, sometimes it can just be better to have the entire report that you're working in inside of a step section, and then you can use it that way. So that's all I've got for today. I'm going to put some links in the description about step sections and sections, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.